Welcome to the cusp of a new space exploration era. Behold, as humanity prepares to return to the moon after 5 decades through 3 groundbreaking missions. The awe-inspiring SLS, our cutting-edge space launch system, awaits its moment to ignite and propel the Orion capsule on an unforgettable lunar journey. As a true aerospace enthusiast, you're about to witness an exhilarating launch. But let's not ignore the legitimate questions raised about the SLS. In this age of innovation, where private space industry has revolutionized launch costs, its very existence is under scrutiny. Get ready for a captivating debate, where tradition and innovation collide, propelling us toward unprecedented frontiers. Why is NASA's building its own completely unreusable rockets? Why has it cost so much money to manufacture? And why does it exist at all? The SLS is a massive rocket building on not just the legacy of the Saturn program, but the Space Shuttle program. Borrowing concepts and actual pods from each system, the SLS uses 2 solid rocket boosters. Together, they will produce more than 75% of the rocket's thrust at launch, burning 5 tons of propellant every 6 seconds and providing the equivalent thrust of 14 4-engine 747 jumbo jets each. These amazing boosters share a remarkable heritage with the legendary Space Shuttle. Incredibly, they are crafted using leftover pods from the Space Shuttle program, but with exciting new modifications to the nozzle and an extraordinary addition of a 5th booster segment. This ingenious upgrade grants the new generation booster a staggering 25% increase in fuel capacity compared to its shuttle predecessors. It's like a thrilling fusion of the past and future, where innovation breathes new life into the remnants of a legendary era. However, unlike the solid rocket boosters of the Space Shuttle, these boosters will not be recovered and refurbished in an era where we can literally fly our boosters back to the ground. This seems like a strange choice. Why did NASA decide to go this route? To understand that, we have to look back in time to programs were canceled in 2011. The Space Shuttle program and the Constellation program. We were all familiar with the Space Shuttle program, but the Constellation program is less known due to the fact it only ever flew a prototype rocket. The Ares prototype flew in 2009 and tested the Orion launch abort system. If that name sounds familiar, that's because Orion is the same spacecraft that will be flying on top of the SLS. The Orion spacecraft was originally designed for the Constellation program before its cancellation in 2011. In fact, if we look at the final planned Ares rocket design, the Ares 5, it bears a striking resemblance to the SLS. That's no coincidence. Just as pods from the Space Shuttle program were scavenged for the SLS designs and employees were taken from the Constellation program. We see this pattern play out throughout the SLS design. The giant orange insulation-covered core stage containing 2 gigantic propellant tanks holding 2 million liters of liquid hydrogen and 742,000 liters of liquid oxygen will be feeding for RS-25 engines. These engines are not only the same design used in the Space Shuttle, but they are literally scavenged from previously flown space shuttles. The 4 engines for Artemis, this one have these serial numbers, and from that, we can track their flight history. These engines have a rich history, with NASA bringing components of the ISS to orbit and flying astronauts to Hubble to repair and maintain us. These are tried and tested engines that, in theory, would save NASA's money. But oddly, the program's greatest criticism is its cost, running up a bill of $23 billion. When Barack Obama released the U.S. government's budget in 2010, the Constellation budget showed all zeros. The program was effectively canceled. Obama's vision for NASA's future was for collaboration between commercial space partners like SpaceX. while shifting NASA's budget and focus to projects which were not commercially viable, a vision that has largely come to fruition today. So if the Constellation program was canceled in 2010, how is this resurrected Frankenstein's monster standing on the pad today, ready to launch to the moon? The answer: politics. This legislation will define NASA's future by building on its past. Obama's cancellation of the Constellation program was met with criticism from politicians from all over the United States. The elevated costs of the program was partially by design. NASA's gained support in Congress by spreading jobs all across the United States, ensuring widespread support by the constituents of politicians in each region. When the Constellation program was canceled, it left thousands of people without. People were understandably upset. This forced the Obama administration to backpedal, resulting in the NASA Authorization Act of 2010 being signed, providing NASA's budget to both the commercial space launch industry and, in effect, brought the Constellation program back from the dead. Under a new name, Artemis, the act even specified that NASA needed to reuse technology contracts and workforce from the Constellation program. And so here we are 12 years later, with the ghosts of Constellation flying to the moon itself, a Frankenstein's monster of space shuttle components. This is clearly not an efficient way of developing rockets, canceling one over-budget project and then bringing it back a couple of months later with added design restrictions. That's perfectly obvious to anyone and everyone involved. It's just how bureaucracy in a democratic system shakes out sometimes. Could that money have been better spent elsewhere? Absolutely. What could have been spent on ACA without the intentional cost inefficiencies? Probably not. This was a jobs program where we get an incredible rocket as the outpost. The SLS, despite its inefficiencies, is undeniably cool. The sound of solid rocket boosters is something I've dreamt of experiencing. I don't think anyone with an honest love of aerospace can look at this machine and not be unofficial. It looks like someone asked Midjourney to create a hybrid of the Saturn V and Space Shuttle. And perhaps that's nostalgia for an era I was born too late to experience. But that era took us to the moon. I have a tattoo of Buzz Aldrin on the moon on my leg. To say I'm excited is an understatement. This machine, if all goes to plan, is going to take us back to the moon.